Alright, so if you think that is cool, I'm going to teach you how to make this exact FPV truck. Let's get going. Alright, so before we actually get started, let's go over the essentials that you will need. And first and foremost, you are going to need an RC crawler. And we will be using the WPL C64-1/16 RC crawler, an ultra budget option costing about $40 from AliExpress, so very, very cheap. Next, you're going to need an FPV video system. So as for the FPV video system, we're actually opting in for analog system because analog is still more budget and easier to get set up, like everything. So we'll be using the analog system. And for the analog system, you're going to need a VTX, so basically a transmitter and a camera and an antenna. And you will also require a receiver, which is going to be your analog goggles. All right, so for this setup, I'm choosing the Rush Tank Mini. So this is a Rush Tank Mini VTX, which you can generate about 800 milliwatts of output power. As for the camera, we will be using the Foxer T-Rex micro camera, which is a very, very nice analog camera, probably the best you can get on the market. As for the antenna, we will be using the Rush MMCX RX CP antenna. So for this particular antenna mount connection, this is called MMCX. So if you're using this particular VTX, you wanted to make sure you get an antenna that it's MMCX. But either way, if you just get this directly, it should still come with a really simple linear antenna, so it should be fine. And analog, we're going to be using RCP. So basically, you can see that there's an R right here. So yeah. As for the goggles, we will be using the SkyZone 040 Pro FPV goggles. Just note that if you're using analog system, you can just get any analog goggles. It should work with any analog VTX. So very, very much option out there. And note that this is going to be a more premium setup. It might be more pricier than what you actually need. The only reason I choose these is because I do fly FPV drones, and these are the parts that is left on my desk, so just scavenging like the old products using them. So if you wanted to go with a cheaper option, here are going to be some cheaper alternatives on the screen for those with a tighter budget. Links are also going to be down below at your quick reference, but do know these are going to give you less range because yeah, they're generally not going to be as high as quality, so just know. Alright, so additionally, we're also going to be upgrading the original radio control system on the WPL because the original radio system only allows about maximum range about 30 meters. So I'm upgrading the radio receiver to a dedicated system. I will be using the Radiolink system. So basically, this is what everybody was talking about, which is supposed to give you about 600 meters of drive range. So this upgrade is not going to be necessarily if you don't plan to operate a high gain video system, as you'll likely lose video signal before losing your radio signal. So anyway, so feel free to skip this step if your goal isn't just to drive far. You're just going to be driving like in front of you, like within 30-40 meters. That should be fine for any VTX. So you do not have to upgrade this. This is just because I wanted to like put on high gain video system. However, if you still decide to upgrade the radio system to the Radiolink system, be aware that you will need a standalone ESC. You're gonna have to get one out from AliExpress or just Amazon, probably costs about 10 bucks. Yeah, you're gonna need a standalone ESC because the original WPL, at least for this particular build, it's using a 2-in-1 ESC plus RX system, and it's not possible to upgrade to a standalone like receiver. So just be aware that if you're using the cheapest option, you might have to spend a little bit more money. So yep, just for your reference. But if you're having like a higher grade car that already has a dedicated receiver, you can just basically swap this out and use this directly. So simpler. All right, so now that we have all the parts, let's actually start the installation. All right, let's first start by connecting the video system. So you can see that I already have the system built up. So the build up is pretty simple. And since we're going to be mounting the system externally, we will not require to open up the car whatsoever. So this is going to be a complete standalone system. You can just put it on any FPV cars that you want, and it's going to work right out of the box. So just make sure that you are aware of that. All right, so what we have to do is that you can see that this is the VTX. You can see that right now everything is connected here. So for this VTX, you are going to be required to solder an external power source that is connecting to the ground and DC in. So obviously the black cable, the ground cable goes to ground, and the red cable goes to DC in. And yeah, if you wanted to get this particular plug, you can. This is going to be available on the Amazon market. Like you can just get a bunch of them. So it has a little capacitor here, and it should stabilize the voltage coming in, and should be better to like not accidentally burn this by chance. So just a little bit more safer. Yeah. So for the particular setup, we're actually going to be running on 2S. So you can obviously use the XC60 or just whatever plug that you like. So I'm just using 2S to power up this because 1S for this one is going to be too weak. Okay, so as for the camera, if you're getting a FPV camera, obviously you're going to have to give it power as well. So you can see that the FPV camera, you're going to get a 5V right here, you're going to get a ground right here. So 5V goes to 5V and ground goes to ground, and then you're going to get an additional yellow cable. So 3 connections. The yellow cable is going to be your video in, so you just have to connect to the video pad, and all you have to do right now is just plug in the antenna, and basically your system is now set up. Okay, so to power this thing up, you could just power up a 2S battery directly. So you can see that we have a 2S battery which is sitting on the bench right now. Okay, so you can see that we're getting power, and then this is already transmitting the signal. Let's actually bring out an FPV monitor. So basically this is going to be same as any analog goggles, so you just have to make sure that you're setting it up to the correct channel. So you can see that we're actually getting footage already. So my channel current setup is on R1, but if you just don't know like which channel you're on, you can just always use the search function, and it's kind of going to run like that, and you will see that it should be landing on R1. Okay, so yeah, this is going to be dumb proof setup, so you can see that we're getting footage. All right, so once the connection has been complete, we can just basically install this entire system onto the FPV card. Okay, so to mount the FPV system, it's going to be very simple. We're just going to be using mostly 3M tapes, double-side tapes, and additional stuff that you probably need, and I forgot to mention, is that you are going to need an FPV mount. So this is the mount that I have printed, so it's not the best print I did. You can see that, yeah, it's slow. It's not good, but anyway, it's going to work for now. So what we're going to be doing is we're just basically going to be mounting the camera on top of like this, and then also stick the VTX on the system as well. As to mount the camera, we actually add a screw right here. So the reason right of this is that we can just use this is called a zip tie to just kind of like secure it. Okay, let's actually do it. Okay, you can see that our antenna right now is just facing up. Probably we could have done a better job, but yeah, works for now. And then we just have to cut off the excessive amount of this, and we are done. Okay, as for the mount, you're just going to be screwing some screws into it. You can see that right now we have adjustable camera. You can just put it up and down as you wish. And then now comes the easy part. I'll just take out the 3M tape, and then you're just going to stick it on top of the car. Just make sure, let's actually make sure that it's aligning properly. Okay, as for this one, we're going to be pulling the tape off as well. Then this is how I'm going to mount it, sideways. Alright, so right now you have a working FPV car. Now we just have to plug in the battery on the bottom right here. The battery can just basically rest right here. You can see that we're actually getting footage, so very nice. Alright, so if this is what you need, that how to like add on FPV video system on top of the FPV on top of RC crawler, then this is going to be your answer. Alright, so if you're the one who's actually wanted to know how to upgrade the existing like transmitter to the Radiolink, then yeah, please stay and I will show you how. Alright, so in the next steps, we will be upgrading the RX to a dedicated R7FG receiver, which is the one that is coming with the Radiolink radio. First, you need to remove the top cover basically from the crawler, as you can see that we already did. So if you need a guidance of how to remove the top cover by step, there is actually a detailed step-by-step video made by suvsteve RC, and links are going to be down below. I'm just not going to do it again to save time, but a big shout out to Steve for making this nice video. So once the cover is off, you're going to see that this is going to be the 2-in-1 ESC, and the power cable, obviously we have to like remove it separately already from this plug, so it's already unplugged so you can see it. So this is the 2-in-1 ESC that we're talking about, and the main reason why we wouldn't be able to just upgrade it, because like this is kind of like, you know, it's like a self one piece, so just you have to upgrade the ESC as well. So let's first start by actually unplugging everything from this thing. So this is going to be our servo. Okay, servo is off, and this is the one that is going to be okay. So this is the on off switch, and this is going to be the motors. Alright, so once everything has been removed, now let's actually talk about how to connect the receiver with the ESC and also the existing equipment that is currently on this chassis. So let's actually start with the most obvious. So servo is right here, and as we know, the first channel is of the ESC. The first channel of the receiver is actually going to be the turning, so basically the where you should connect the servo. So same drill, always like plug in the like this one, plug the black cable facing outside. So I don't know if they kind of use like a ground cable, but this is going to be ground anyway. So this is set up like this, and the second one is going to be our throttle, so basically our trigger, and it's going to boost the motor, and we're going to connect this one to the ESC. So this is the cable, this is the ports that you should be connecting from the ESC to the receiver, and it's going to be on the manual right there. Okay, next let's actually just look at the ESC completely, because most of the stuff that we are going to be connecting are going to have to be soldering directly onto this. So my build will have to, you will have to solder, but if you have a different like setup, you probably don't need to, because like I don't use these plugs, and that's the main reason. So yeah. Alright, so for the motors, you can see that this is a plug that we are unable to use. So what I'm trying to do is I probably will be desoldering this entire cable, and I will be soldering the motors to here. So you can see that there's an N plus and minus. So just complete desolder this cable as well, and directly solder a cable from the motors to the ESC directly. Alright, and then the second one, this one is already connected. This is our throttle. And the switch is probably easy. You can see that the switch is right here. So all we have to do is unscrew this and put this back in, and this should basically resolve the problem. The last cable that we're going to talk about is going to be the cable that we actually receive power from the battery. So this is also the plug that I'll use, and I am planning to just upgrade it to like change it, not upgrade it to XT30, because I do fly FPV drones and I have lots of XT30 2S batteries sitting around. So yep, I'm just going to be upgrading this to a XT30. So completely desolderation and solder this cable on there. All right, so in order to use this setup, we're also going to be coming back to the original shell. You can see that the original power cable is using those kind of 4 pins and this cable right here. So what I will be doing is I will completely replace this cable. I'll just cut it off, and I'll solder XT30 on here and XT30 on here, so you know it goes like that. All right, so basically that's how the basic explanation of how we are going to be connecting everything together. So let's actually cut open this cover and we can start the connection. I will start with the power cable first, since this is probably the one that I always start with. All right, let's get going. Okay, so what we are going to be doing at this stage is we are going to be desoldering these 2 cables, so one for the power and one for the motors. So you're just going to bring out your soldering iron, kind of like touch it like that. Okay, it's coming off. Alright, so later on we're going to be using this motor cable, so we can also make a cable that basically monitors the voltage. So we're going to save this aside. We're going to do that later. So next step, we're just going to be connecting the XT30 cable. So plus to plus, minus to minus. Okay, zero. Let's check it. Yeah, it looks okay. Okay. Right, now next we're going to be connecting cable for the motors. All right, so for the motor cables, we're just going to be using 2 little cables. So I think this, I don't remember, this should be 20 AWG, so it should be sufficient, because the ones that we are using for the current motors even thinner. So I think this is going to be good enough. Okay, so plus to plus, minus to minus. So the red one goes here. Alright, so once we have connect this one, this should be sufficient. We can go to the chassis right now. Alright, so at the chassis, you can see that basically at the motor side, we're just going to be disconnecting the cables. So it's kind of like solder onto the metal pins. Once you removed it, it should be like that. I'm just going to put it aside and just kind of save the cable. Okay, so for here, we're just going to be connecting these cables to the 2 metal joints. We're just going to get the motor cable, the red one first. So this is the red one. Okay, that's good. Make sure that it's tight enough. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, so the black one is going to be a little bit harder. Alright, so since it's kind of a little bit hard to get to the black one, I decided to just remove the entire motor module. So yeah, there we go. So you can see that now it's much easier. So we can just tilt it this side. Okay, so our motor has been connected. Okay, so the next step, we're just going to be putting this thing back. Okay, then good. So same drill. Just gonna put these 4 screws back. Right. So next up, we're actually going to be replacing the switch. So it should be simple. It should be like a take out and put in type of operation. Okay, so most of the stuff are done. Wait, where did my cable go? Did it just actually fall off? Oh my god, this thing just broke off for me. So this cable actually broke off. Oh man, this is not fun. Alright, so this has been fixed. Now let's actually plug in the receiver just to see everything is connecting soundly. Okay, so first thing, servo, cables goes right there. Okay, that cable goes right there. Okay, so this should be basically how the setup is going to be looking like. Okay, so next step, we're actually going to be plugging in some LiPo just to make sure that it's not going to, we're not having shorts or whatsoever. We're going to use a short savior. So this thing, when you plug in the LiPo, it's basically going to be showing you that in case there is going to be a short, it's just going to be beeping on you. So we can just plug in a LiPo like this, and then let's power it on. Okay, so everything is powered on and it's not giving a rest signal, so this is a successful connection. Okay, we're actually going to be bringing out the radio right here, which is going to be powering it up. Okay, so it should be automatically binding for this particular one. And what we can do is just turn it. Okay, so receiver is working. And if I press the throttle, what's it going to do? Oh, actually I think it's reversed. Okay, so we have to find a way to fix it. Okay, let's do that later, but let's actually complete the build and we can figure out this later. Okay, so we're actually going to be shrink wrapping this thing so it does not get exposed to moisture. Okay, so we have, just bring out a piece of shrink wrap and cut it to the correct size. Approximate, it's good enough. Okay, so this should be sufficient. Alright, so we're going to bring out our heat gun and then basically use a little piece of wood just so we don't accidentally melt this plastics. Okay. Up. That's good enough. So at this stage, our build is mostly done. We just have to kind of like arrange most of the stuff in this little thing. Okay, so I'm planning to put it like this. The receiver should be able to stick right here. So this is actually perfect for it to kind of like be there. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the ESC, I'm just going to use a 3M tape. You can buy a bunch of this from Amazon for like they're cheap. And then just kind of like put it on the other side. So the ESC just not going to go dangling around. Okay, now, so this part is done. Now let's actually switch back to this is going to be the card itself. So probably for this particular build, the only thing that we couldn't reconnect right now is going to be the lights, because I think it only takes 3 volts and I'm not sure like how much volts that thing output is going to be, so I don't want to accidentally fry it. Yep, so apparently I think this is going to be we're just not going to connect this for now, but if it's okay to connect to that receiver, please let me know in the comment section, because I'm just not really savvy with like RC cars. So okay, let's actually modify these two cables to XT30. Okay, so to modify the cable, we are just going to be cutting this cable completely. Just going to cut it like completely. Then let's make a little lead out here so we can begin the soldering. Too short. Okay, that's good. Okay, same goes here as well. Alright, so once we have connected these two cables, the build is basically done. Right now, the additional thing that I wanted to do is to build a cable of the XT30. This is XT60 to XT60. We're going to build this cable so we can monitor the voltage. And we do have this cable sitting around because when we're removing the motor wires, there is one additional cable that is coming out. So we're just going to use this to build a cable of this, just using the XT30. So obviously, if you do not want to make additional cable, you can just solder this one directly to here, or just directly to the original power source and plug it into the receiver. It's going to do the same thing, but since like I want a cable that I can remove, so yeah, we're just going to build a cable. All right, so once you have complete the cable, it should look like somewhat like this. So you can see that basically just an extension cable that is in the middle, and you will be able to plug this in the receiver, and now you will be able to detect the voltage. All right, so let's actually plug it in. Alright, so at the receiver side, this is going to be where we are going to be plugging in the voltage detection cable. So you can see plus to plus, minus to minus. So the red one goes to there and the black one goes there. So we can just plug it in like this. Okay, and then the next step, all we have to do is to connect the remaining cables. And we're going to plug in the cable that is on the top. Okay, so the connection is now done. Okay, so just for precaution reason, we're just going to use a short saver to plug it in the battery again, just to see that there is no shorts in this particular build. Okay, we'll just plug it in. Okay, so everything is powering on and we're not getting a red light, so this is a good indication that everything has been connected correctly. Okay, so basically this is going to be the most bulk part of this build. Now let's actually just put everything back together and we can just go test it at the field. Alright, so we have complete the reassemble of the entire shell of the truck. You can see that we're running the antenna right here, so you can see that it's coming out from this and it goes in from here, it comes out from the window, so perfectly holds it right here. So same goes to the another one. You can see that it comes out from here and then stays from here. Yep. Okay. And one thing I noticed is that I accidentally installed like the power button like upside down. So currently the on is off, off is on. So yeah, just make sure when you're doing it, make sure you do it on the right position. Also, another thing I observed for this particular ESC is that this is kind of a little bit short, so you won't be able to use your finger to like get to it. You will have to use like a little screwdriver to like switch it on off. So something that you wanted to pay attention if you're using this particular kit. Alright, so I think that's about it. We can actually go out, put back the FPV system, and we can just go test the entire rig. Let's get going. Alright, so we're switching the scene to a local park, and we're just going to be test driving this FPV truck. So to operate this VTX, first you're going to have to power it up first. So let's just power it up. Okay, so to operate this VTX is very simple. There's only two buttons. The button on the left, this is going to be the frequency button. So you will be able to use this to adjust to the particular channel that you want on your like goggles. So currently I'm setting up as R1, and if you want R1, this is going to be the particular indication of the lights that is showing it's R1. And I'm just going to be putting the table on the screen so you can just look at it and adjust to the correct channel that you want. Okay, so the power, next is going to be the power. So power, this VTX basically has 4 power outputs. So If it goes to green, it's going to be 25 milliwatts. You can look at this light. If it goes to red, it's okay, let's do it again. So green is going to be 25 milliwatts. This is kind of yellow. I don't know if you can see it, but yellow is 100. And if you do like red, it's going to be 400. And if you go to purple, it's going to be 800 milliwatts. We're just going to put it on the max so we can potentially drive this a little bit further. All right, let's put it down and let's give it a go. All right, so the footage you're seeing right now is coming from the SkyZone Goggles DVR, and I have to say, I'm kind of surprised by how good the Voxer T-Rex camera is still holding up as of today. I kind of left it on the bench and did not use it, but I installed it today and it kind of reminds me how good it was. You almost forget you're using an analog system because the footage, video quality is just really good. You see most of the details, colors, and yeah, overall it's just super crisp. Sure, it's not going to be quite as to the level of the latest digital system, but I would say this is kind of close to the Vista era, you know, kind of like there. So this is actually probably the ceiling of analog, just in my opinion. So happy with the result. Also, this is actually my first time driving a FPV RC crawler, and I have to say, this thing is just incredibly fun. Obviously, it's going to be different from flying a drone. Like when you're flying a drone, you have much more speed, it's a lot faster, you're closer to ground, you're performing like freestyle tricks, and it just gives you the adrenaline. But this one, you don't have the same kind of thrill, but hey, it just feels more immersive because you're just like you're sitting in the driver's seat and everything around you just feels massive. It almost feels like you're stepping into like a miniature world. So it is just super, super cool. So if your dream or you wanted to do it in the future, like to drive like a monster truck, then probably just start with the RC crawler and put a FPV on top, and you probably will get a little bit feel of it probably. Anyway, this is going to be something just for, you know, if you just wanted to try out, relatively cheap to do that. So next, let's actually just talk about the things I think we can improve on this build, because this is just my initial first build, so I wanted to improve it in the future. So one thing we can improve on in the next build is to incorporate the Walksnail gimbal system to support head tracking. So right now you can see that because the camera is just fixed, we can only look ahead, like we can turn our heads around, but when you're actually driving, you want it to look around, like left and right, and up and down, up and down. So I think that is going to bring the immersiveness even more into this experience. So this is probably the next video I will be making for this particular one. So if this is something that you might be interested in and wanted to know how to do that, make sure to subscribe so you get notified as soon as the video drops. Also, another improvement on is adding probably a small fan blowing to the VTX, because right now the VTX is just like there, you know, so you're not getting as much of airflow compared to FPV drones, so it's getting hot like real quick. So if you wanted to put a lot of like output power on top of it, it might just burn eventually. So this is something I will probably add on the next the video, just kind of like add something on the top to blow at it so it doesn't overheat as much. Alright, so that's about it for this video, and if you like what I'm doing and wanted to see more, please like and subscribe to support this channel. And thanks in advance, and happy driving.